Sorry, the video cut out. So yes, when I was looking for those items, or when I was looking for a black employee that might be able to assist me, you know, a person of my color, there were some black people that I noticed ringing people up, not when I was particularly looking for the items, but, you know, in that respect. But it was still very difficult to find. And, you know, when you're looking for stockings and pantyhose and you're trying to find something quickly, like a bandage if you cut your thumb, like in the scenario, and there's nothing there, and then it just makes me frustrated when I was looking for the book and the baby doll for my child. I mean, the only black, you know, the only representation I could find of someone that would look like me or look like my child was a black Barbie doll, and that was it out of the large amount of dolls and Barbies that exist. And then trying to find a book, there was a coloring book that maybe had a girl that looked like she could be black, and then in a different aisle I found a regular book that my child could read and age level, and it was the same exact character but on a different type of book. Obviously, one's a coloring book and one's a reading book, so you know, that lack of representation. And then looking for fashion magazines, who's on the cover of all these things, the beauty tips that you're looking for don't match up to your skin tone. If even looking for foundations, there's various grades of foundations, just like there's semi-various grades of stockings and pantyhose. But for makeup, there's maybe a little bit more representation, but it's still all centered towards a very white, pale skin. And trying to find a darker tone, or let alone one that like could exactly match your exact tone, you know, because as a black woman there's a lot of variation in skin tones actually, and depending on where your skin falls, you're probably not as dark as the darkest one that they have. When I'm looking as a white female for makeup, it's very easy to, you know, if you're tanner in the summer, you get a little bit tanner, a little bit darker. Not me, because I'm always pale, but I just mean in general, people can find a lot of variation towards the lighter shades. And so essentially this activity just shows the lack of representation and diversity in items, and ability to search in stores for the items that pertain or are recognizable. And looking for a hairdresser, I mean, you can't, as a black woman, I can't just go into any hairdresser. There's certain stores, I know I found a few in Asbury, and I think there was one in Eatontown or something, that when I searched, and so you have to go to that particular store, and yeah, it just keeps coming back to the same lack of diversity, lack of representation, and then also the segregation of items that we discussed in class, which is ridiculous. So basically that's what it comes down to, is just being ridiculous in this day and age. And so as a white female, when I'm looking in terms of privilege, the consumer culture that I partake in a lot of ways, even though I try not to. It comes much more easily than I would imagine as trying to put myself in the shoes of a black woman who is looking for the items that we were told to look for, or for any items really that are particular to my skin color or my hair type, or for my child, for adequate representation. I think that's something that I've been focusing on a lot lately when I've been looking at these topics, is in addition to cultural appropriation, just whitewashing. And I know I've mentioned it before, but in the media, the lack of representation, and then the representation that we do have is so stereotyped, and stereotypes are not necessarily a negative thing, but in a lot of ways they are, and they're mostly negative stereotypes that are portrayed. And as a child, when you don't see the people that you could identify with, or who, if you see the people that you can identify with and they're portrayed in a certain way, it's really disheartening. It's not the same, but when I think of like LGBT representation, it's in a similar vein of stereotypes and for representation, in terms of like queer baiting and stuff like that. But yeah, I think when I look back and self-reflect on this activity, looking for these items specifically in the mind of this scenario, or being a person of color, being a black woman in this scenario, it's difficult and can get frustrating. So that was my experience with this activity. Sorry for rambling on and on, but yeah, that's my thoughts. All right, have a good night, everyone. See you tomorrow.